So good morning and good afternoon to all participants joining us from around the world today. So this is Xing San, Senior Researcher from Global Center Adaptation. So on behalf of the organization team, I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, part of the China-African Knowledge Exchange on Climate Adaptation, Integrating Climate Resilience into Infrastructure series. So this three-part webinar series aims to foster dialogue, share knowledge, and strengthen collaboration between China and African countries on advancing climate resilience infrastructure development. So today's sessions focus on integrating climate risk dimensions into resilient infrastructure, a timely and critical topic as we collectively work to align infrastructure planning and investments with climate adaptation goals. So I would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere appreciation to the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China and the National Center for Climate Change Strategy and the International Cooperation for their strong support in making this event possible. So we are honored to be joined today by an excellent group of the speakers and the participants from across regions. And we look forward to the rich exchange of ideas and experiences. To officially open the event, I now have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Cao Ying, Director of Climate Center, Ministry of Ecology and the Environment, to deliver the opening remarks. Dr. Cao, please.
好，谢谢。好像他的这个翻译和这个不是很同步。好，那我就开始了哈。好，谢谢孙老师。好，尊敬的各位专家、各位同事，早上好，下午好啊！非常高兴呢，今天和大家能够相聚在咱们这个中非气候适应的这个交流研讨会上，来共同探讨，就是将气候韧性呢纳入基础设施这一个全球性的议题。那么刚才这个孙老师也提到了，那么这个会呢，其实也是得到了这个 GCA 和这个生态环境部的这个大力的支持。其实本来今天下午，生态环境部的侯方处长呢也是准备来参会呢，但是因为有一些部里有一些特别急迫的事情，所以说他现在在处理。那么我代表他呢来就是欢迎咱们今天参会的各位专家和各位嘉宾，我觉得这是一个非常好的这个机会哈。那么也是对各位专家、各位各个包括非洲的各个机构的代表和各位同仁呢来表示热烈的欢迎。那么这次会议呢，实际上是我们这个中方就生态环境部包括我们中心和 GCA 今年工作计划的一部分。那么也是我们今年即将召开的这个系列的这个研讨会的这个第一场活动。我们也很高兴呢，我们气候战略中心呢作为承担方和 GCA 呢一起合办了咱们今年的这个第一场的活动，也是非常的荣幸。那么我们期待呢，也是通过这样的知识的交流和分享呢，能够践行我们中国一直坚持的南南合作的理念，然后呢，来和非洲国家一起呢，来提升这个气候韧性，尤其是基础设施方面的气候韧性。那么共同推动周非呢可持续发展的这样的一个更美好的这样的未来。那么我们都知道，通过一系列的这种网络上的信息，包括一些大家的一些学术的报道，也都可以看到。那么刚刚过去的这个2024年呢，是被这个世界气象组织确认为是这个有气象记录以来的最热的年份。然后全球平均气温呢，已经较工业化前水平呢提高了大概是1.55摄氏度，而且你可以这样讲，是首次超过了1.5度的这个温升的红线。那么这意味着什么呢？这意味着气候变化呢，对自然生态系统和经济社会系统呢，它一定会带来这个巨大的风险和挑战，尤其是对这种基础设施的这种影响和威胁呢，可能是我们未来可能更需要关注的这个领域。那么对于我们中国来讲呢，我们中国呢地大物博，范围比较广大，那么是处于这个全球气候变化的这个敏感区和影响的这个显著区。那么地表的年平均气温呢，地表的平均温度呢，也是呈现着一个显著的一个上升趋势，而且这个平均水平呢，也是高于全球的这样的一个同期的平均水平。另外呢，我们近年来呢，我们中国的很多地方呢，也是频遭一些极端天气事件的这种影响和侵袭。那么，如果大家看新闻，也可以看到 现在呢，中国的南方，比如说湖南等一些地方呢，也正在遭受一些极端暴雨的这种影响。那么所以说呢，中国是面临着这种气候变化的这个影响和威胁呢，是非常的紧迫。同样呢，因为今天是很多同事是来自于非洲大陆，那么非洲大陆呢，它是因为它独特的这种地理和气候的条件，那么同样其实和我们中国有相似之处，也是全球气候脆弱性最高的这个地区之一。那么比如说是干旱呀。那么洪涝啊，以及引发的一些粮食的安全问题呢，相互交织，同样也面临着一系列的这种气候的严峻的挑战。所以说呢，可以这样说，我们中国和非洲呢，面临着共同的这种气候变化的影响和挑战。那么就在这样的一个背景下，我觉得我们今天的这个会议呢，也是非常的这种有价值和有意义的。那么我们今天的会议呢，主要是聚焦在这个交通领域的这个基础设施。那么，我们选择了这个可以说是基础设施领域，然后对这个国民的生活、对经济的发展大家都高度关注的交通领域，我们把它作为今年第一场这个研讨会的这样的一个重要的议题，我们觉得是非常有必要的。那么，在今天的这个议题呢，我们可以说是既呼应了当下我们非洲的这样的一个迫切的需要，其实也符合我们中国的这样的一个发展的这种需求嘛。那么，我们通过今天的这种在交通领域气候韧性的这种交流呢，我们期待呢能够为全球的气候治理呢提供这种更好的一些更切合实际的这样的一些解决方案。那么我们其实呢，我们对这种气候变化的影响呢，我们中国其实和一直非常那个积极的致力于全球的这样的一种合作。那么我们在2023年的这个4月呢，那么生态环境部、中央气象局和世界气象组织呢也共同签署了关于支持联合国全民早期预警倡议的这个3方的协议。那么这个协议呢，目的就是共同为相关的发展中国家呢提高应对气候灾害风险和这个早期预警能力呢提供帮助。那么在 COP29期间呢，那么习近平主席特别代表呢，丁薛祥副总理呢也出席了这样的加强早期预警、共筑气候适应未来的这样的高级别的这个会议。那么生态环境部和中国气象局呢也发布了早期预警促进气候变化适应中国行动的这个方案。那么这个方案呢，就是旨在是在未来的3年呢，和国际上的和国际社会呢共同分享这个中国在气候变化的一些普查呀，以及早期预警方面的一些良好的这个经验。那么其实通过这个全民早期预警的倡议呢，也是想携手世界上的其他的发展中国家呢，一起来高度的应对这种气候变化的影响和威胁，尤其是在预警和应对方面呢，然后来进行深入的这个交流与合作。那么，其实非洲国家呢，也是中国呢在进行国际合作和交流当中特别重视、高度重视的一个区域。那么，到目前为止呢，中国呢已经与非洲的17个国家呢签署了19份的这个气候合作的这个备忘录，而且通过“一带一路”框架呢等，在这个框架下进行了一系列的这个项目层面的深入的合作，而且在去年的中非合作论坛上呢，双方也确定了未来3年的一些10大的行动。那么在这样的一个基础上呢，我们也是期待呢，和非洲的国家和非洲的国家呢来进行进一步的深化交流合作。那么我觉得今天的这个会议呢，其实就是体现我们这种和非洲国家深化交流合作的这个思想的一个非常重要的一个体现，也是一个活动的这个内容。那么，对于全球适应中心呢，其实一直这些年来，和生态环境部也好，和我们中心也好，一直以来呢，进行了非常深入的这个交流和合作，也开展了一系列的这个非常深入的这种不论是这种研讨会这种会议层面的，包括项目层面的这个交流和合作。那么，通过这种我们和 GC 的合作呢，GC 呢把国际上的一些先进经验也介绍给中国。同样呢，也把我们中国在气候适应领域的一些 取得的一些实践的经验呢，也分享给全球其他的国家。我觉得我们和这种 GC 的合作呢，也是一种深入的、非常友好的，而且非常持续的这样的一种良好的这种合作。我们也期待未来呢，我们和 GC 的这种合作呢，继续的这种深入下去。那么今天呢，我们这个中心呢也非常高兴承办了与 GCA 的这种今天的这个交通基础设施的这样的一个讨论和交流。我认为呢，我们今天的这个会议呢，不仅能够为中非双方呢在气候韧性建设方面搭建一个非常好的这种合作的平台，那么也能够为我们中非双方呢探索适应气候变化的这种，尤其是基础设施领域的那个有效途径呢，也提供了一个非常好的这个契机。那么我们期待也是，其实这也是我们一个非常好的一种合作和交流的平台和模式。我们也期待呢，能够通过这样的一种形式的交流和合作呢，为这种双方呢在提升基础设施的韧性方面呢，能够取得更多的一些这种实质性的这样的一个交流的这个成果。那么我们也期待能够借助这个 GC 的这样的一个平台呢，把我们双方的这种交流的这种成果和这种智慧呢，能够分享给世界上的其他的这个国家。那么最后呢，我是衷心的祝愿本次研讨会呢能够取得这个圆满成功。那么也期待今天到会的这种中国和非洲的专家以及非洲的各位这个与会的朋友呢，能够进行充分的交流和深入的探讨。我们也期待能够达成更多的这种交流的交流和合作的这个成果。好，再次感谢各位专家和朋友的到会。好，谢谢。
Thank you very much.
Mm.
Thanks, Dr. Cao, for this insightful opening remark. Thank you very much. So, just as a reminder for our audience, so in this event, we provide a simultaneous translation between Chinese and English. So, you may select the language from the Zoom interface. So you can select Chinese or English, or you can also listen to the original voice. Okay, thank you very much. So now I would like to go to the presentation. So our first speaker is Professor Saninier Faye. So Professor Saninier Faye is a full professor at Université Cheikh Anta Diop de Dakar in Senegal. So he is an expert in hydrogeology, water resource management, hydrogeochemistry, and environmental geology. So with over 30 years of experience in academia, Professor Faye has supplied more than 20 PhD students and over 100 master theses, and published near 100 scientific papers in prestigious journals. So he has led numerous international research projects and actively contributes to several international societies. So we have honored to welcome him today. So Professor Faye, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Thun. I think that you hear me very well.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, so I would like first to thank you, the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China, who is organizing this webinar workshop, and as well as the GCA, Global Center for Adaptation. And for this latest GCA, they have really initiated this project for Senegal, which can be extended to the western part of Africa. And this project was run since 2022, end of 2022. It's just ended. We are at the final document for promoting this project. And they were also part of the team as well. And I would say that it was a real collaboration between our university, Cheikh Anta Diop University, CSE, which is the Environmental Monitoring Center of Senegal, as well as GCA, and also the Oxford Analytic Infrastructure at the University of Oxford, which is part also of this investigation. So what I'm going to present is like the final document, which is a roadmap which come from this resilient infrastructure, transport infrastructure in Senegal. And it will summarize the main results we've obtained since these last 2 years. So it is many documents and many workshop, stakeholders workshop take place during the process, and we end up with this roadmap. So my theme of talk is resilience of terrestrial or land transport infrastructure in Senegal, adaptation options. So the project which is called the Climate Change Adaptation for Resilience Infrastructure and Nature-Based Solution Project, which we locally call PACSIR in French, get an overall objective to contribute to policy and technical response to the impact of climate hazard for designing and constructing sustainable and resilient transport system in Senegal. So extend it to West Africa. We limit it in Senegal, but what's happening is, it may happen through the whole West African parts. So as I said before, this is the final delivery, which is 1.6 of this project, which set up the roadmap for resilient transport infrastructures. So many document came out before, from the first one to 1.5, which go from territorial diagnosis of the degree of exposures, going to evaluate the damage and stakeholders dialogues, to select adaptation and funding options. So it's what I will summarize in this presentation. So the first part was to evaluate the exposure and vulnerability and the risk we've got in our transport assets. So for the transport assets, you can see we use these three figures. The one in the left is an existing roads, highways, which exist in Senegal. So it's mainly road between cities. We did not consider the urban roads. So it's mainly roads built from national to regional to departmental roads, which link between town. This is the one in the left. The one in the right is the railway, which link the regions. And the one below is all this road which are planned from the master plan, which is going through 2035. So we've got a lot of road to be built through this 10 to 15 years. So you have to remind what the methodology we use. We use, and what is happening in Senegal is 3 types of hazards, which are the key hazards we've got, which is extreme temperature and heat wave, which getting to bushfire. The second one is intense precipitation, which bring floodings in many regions. And the third one is erosion, coastal to continental erosion. And the asset we consider is mainly transport infrastructure, going from roads, highways, railways, and port and airports. Yeah. And what we've analyzed is the direct impact and also the indirect impact. The direct impact is from the physical deterioration of the materials, the fragility of the infrastructure like road, bridge, etc., disruption of transport service, and the impact will go to really break or disrupt the service continuity, increase maintenance costs, and also the issue of safety also for users. So we go through this process to evaluate the risk we've got. So if we take the flooding events, so we use data from a program which we call PAGES, which evaluate return flow for 100 years, which is quite a maximum flooding scenario. And we can see that the water stage or the water height can be from 0 to 5 meters, according to the studies of the program of the fishes, which is just ending. I attended the last meeting yesterday to present for presenting these results. And we evaluate this scenario with regards to the main transport infrastructure from the national road, which is the one in the left. We got the regional road, which is in the middle, and the department road, which is. And you can see from these colors, wherever it's a big line, these are the portions of the road which will be affected if flooding depth scenario is built here from 0 to 5. And you can see that almost many roads, in part of them, really they will be affected by the flooding if we take the different category of the road. So we see something which really should consider it's happening now. We have a real problem now on flooding events which have disruption on the transport system. So this is the first evaluation we've done. So if we want to categorize them into the flooding scenario between the low, high, and extreme flood, we evaluated in terms of district, from region to commune, and we can see that in most of the region, which are in the north, in the eastern part, the length of damage which will be affecting or be vulnerable can go more than 200 road lengths, which can be affected. And that is from the regional, and we get to the communal one, the commune. You can see it, which is in the left. You can see that the affected will be between 50 to 100 lengths, 100 kilometers lengths. So even we evaluate those roads which are planned from the master plan, and we can see that prior to building this road, we can see that some of the planning road are really in a vulnerable area, and you can see it in region, especially from Matam, Saint-Louis, and Luga, and through the different road we planned from 2021 to 2025, in between 2026 to 2030, and 2031 to 2035. So really we categorize and evaluate the level of vulnerabilities of this road from region to commune. So we can, and we've made some analysis of the damage which will be produced, and we can see it, as I mentioned it in red. The whole total cost of damage will be 4.6 billion USD if you convert our local currency to dollars USD. And we can see it from the map that those who are more dark blue are roads which are more affected. So we can see that the road from the north and to the east will be presenting more damage, and we can see it in this diagram here, and with the cost of damage which may happen here from this part of the country. So we evaluate the risk, we evaluate the damage, we evaluate the cost of damage, and we can see it also if we go to department scale. We can see it, those in the north are more affected, and in terms of cost of damage is quite high, because in the northern part we've got a river which called the Senegal River, which has got a big valley, and most of the time it is flooded in this part of the country. So if we take Okay. Let me see, I get it wrong here. Yes. So, and it's the same analysis we've done, and by using the category of road. Here we've got the national roads, here we've got the department road, and there's a regional road, and also the road which are planning from the master plan here. And we can see that from how it is, the lengths which will be affected if the scenario happens, from 10 to 20 kilometers here. And we can see that from the region how this will be occurring through the flooding events. So it's we taking into account all roads except the urban road, because the urban roads are in a much lower scale here. And if you take the erosion, the erosion factors here, we can see that even the same happen. The road from the north, Matam, Saint-Louis, Tambacounda are more affected here in this area, and we downscale it to department and even to communes, which are at the lower scale, geographical scale here. And we've done the same analysis using highway, department roads, and regional road to make a statistic how the length of road we should be affecting, considering the different region in Senegal. So we cover the whole country in terms of vulnerabilities. And if you take the railways networks also, it's quite it's differ a bit, because those who are in the center are more affected, and in the southeast of the country. And we can see the damage which will be which we've got if these events of scenario happen as well. So, and the risk is more pronounced here also as well for the rail networks, especially those who are planned through the master plan of 2035 here. And so that we should consider really bringing the adaptation option prior to building these future roads through this the master plan of 2035. So if we sum up a bit with the existing road, we can see that we've selected 10 of the most affected section of road, which is shown in these figures, and you can see it from the north and the northeast region, and part of the south and center of the country. And we can see the cost of damage which will be happening for the existing roads here. So, and in terms of indirect risk, right, what's the disruption of this traffic would be affected? We have evaluated like 571 health service facilities which be isolated if we got a disruption. In terms of education service, we can see that 4,040 schools will be affected, and even for the markets also we affected. And also in terms of vehicles, how the mobility will be affected as a direct, indirect risk if this scenario happened as well worldwide in the nation. So what we have done here, we align the action framework with really the policy of Senegal, especially with these two plans. We've got two plan, which was the emerging Senegal plan, which was planned to 2035, and we shifted to Senegal vision of 2050, and we've got a national adaptation plan, and this what we have made should align with this internal policies here. And for this internal policy, we evaluated that a total budget of 13 billion USD will be affected, especially for adaptation, where 4.3 billion will be affected for adaptation in as an item. And the main priority sectors for adaptation was infrastructure and flooding, and which is a case which we are dealing. We've got also coastal erosion, which is a very big factor, and also transport here and human settlements. So this means that what we have done aligned really with the internal policy in Senegal. So through stakeholders dialogues, we've got we exchange with them all transport stuff, and we identified the main option and especially main area of action, strengthening road infrastructure using adapted materials, creating resilient corridors, advanced dredging system. We have to modernize the railway system and especially also build the capacities for engineers, so to shift from technical to green engineers. And some adaptation technique was selected as well from a structural solution like elevating infrastructure, engineering, building new engineering structures, material adapted to wetlands as well, innovative drainage system was, and also the stakeholders selected the nature-based solution like riverbank protection, retention basin, and natural flood management as well for the options. So, and for each from each adaptation or option and the projects we selected, we have to describe the description of exposure, the risk and damage. We have to evaluate the impact on goods and services, and we have to align it with the ODD target and also the national contribution theme if this option cover this. And also we have to select the type of option and its implementation, what we would expect for as a result and impacts, who will be the responsible, which institution will be responsible for this option, and how this option is linked to other option, and also the source of funding. So when selecting this project, we have to think about all these items before. And these were the main option we selected, like there was 9 in total, elevation of infrastructure located in a floodplain, flood deflection. We have to divert floods, create slope for evacuation of railroad, using material adapted, creating small bridge, going to pavement, to gabion, to regular maintenance, and to promoting governance. All this was selecting as with dialogue with stakeholders for this option. So we've ended up with a roadmap where really the roadmap was aimed to really provide a strategic framework for development, rehabilitation, and adaptation for the resilient transport infrastructure. So this roadmap, which we just handed to the Ministry of Transport, that was 1 month ago, will serve really as a guide for decision makers and stakeholders in prioritizing investment in implementing structuring projects, which will align with our national policy as well. So we have to we use parameters and criteria to select project, and which we really put in a series of projects during the process. And this was the criteria we use for prioritizing adaptation options, the type of road, railroad, airport, the road in the master plan, the criticality of term of damage, socioeconomic importance of the infrastructure, the cost of options, compatibility of option with environment and local ecosystem, We have to align with international community like SDG, NDC, etc. Equality, we have to take the gender issue, and we have to sequence the project, the time frame, and also the number of projects we should be selecting in the roadmap. So in a whole, we ended with many projects. Like here, we selected 27 projects, which is built within this in this roadmap documents. I would not read all of them, but this was selected by stakeholders who are in the sectors for the roadmap, since this roadmap is for policymakers. So that these are the project we selected, which consider technical option in specific roads. Right? It's consider also a nature-based solution, and also capacity building, and also governance project. All are built inside this series of projects. So after that, there was a way forward from this document, how we get to the financing, how we integrate the roadmap into the policy process, and also how to ensuring the legacy of resilient infrastructure in transport. So it's this document of roadmap include really this process of strengthening climate adaptation in Senegal. And we see that many of funding institutions have been targeted here. And we have been helped with GCA to identify, and especially those who have already intervention in Senegal. We really select them to see these are funding institutions which can really act to work with this strategic document here as well. So we have to integrate also this process into the policy. So how we can revise on including international adaptation plan, how we can revise our national contribution, determine contribution, how we can update and our national road and highway master plan, which was already said. And since this project really uses real data, institutional data, it's a very well-proven scientific data. So this will help really to update all these documents, and especially how we can really share this methodology and the tools and knowledge with really implementing institutions. So since they were not aware of this climate change impact as well. And the last thing is how we can really, for the budget which is planned for the NDC, how we can align it with really this roadmap we just built in this during this process of 2 years. And also another point is ensuring the legacy of the resilient infrastructure. So the capacity building is really very strong. So this should be really implementing through the stakeholders in the sectors, and with the capacity to conduct a further resilient assessment in the years to come. And so we have to review and update this document with new roads or new events also as well. And the other thing is the knowledge management, which is, since it's based on really real data, institutional data, scientific data as well, and how all this should be transferred to stakeholders and also for academia to use this result within this project. So. And this was the last slide I would like to present for the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Yep. If our audience have questions, you may type the questions in the webinar chat. So here I just have quick questions about the roadmap that you introduced here. So thanks for introducing that nice roadmaps. And my question here is that from a scientific perspective, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge when you develop that roadmap? It's on the understanding of the climate risk, or it's on the engineering side, the construction side, or the preparation of the maybe other tasks. So which is the main challenge that you see in this roadmap?
Thank you very much. So this is a big question, because since this was integrative process, because during the whole process we include transport institutions, which I call here stakeholders, because there was a big challenge. The cost of rehabilitation from our transport system was too high, extremely high. Every year, every rainy season. So there is a special budget for rehabilitation roads for that. And that can first justify this roadmap. So, and to identify which length or portion of road is more vulnerable to and will be impacted with regard to the hazard we have chosen, especially for the flooding hazard. Since this road was built without taking any consideration of climate change, I would say even climate variabilities, and is more affected, and the engineering work conception was not built with regard to that. And this is a big challenge for the water authorities, especially the institution in charge of infrastructure, how really now to build resilient transport system infrastructure. So it's the big challenge was to implement it, or to train also engineers who are working in this side, not to building technically, but as well to take this issue of climate change to say, okay, we have to change our system of design and to take this into account. And this really it was very welcome from really the institutions, especially those who are building road, to say this is really a fact. And even within this project, we've selected two portions. When we get through a demonstrated project saying, okay, you are building this line, but these are the portion which will be affected, and these are the options you can use to make your road more resilient. So it's something which is completely new. We got a budget for rehabilitation, which the state cannot support for every year. So it's a way really of getting this really getting the state with this big budget of rehabilitation, and really to see how they can shift from engineering, strictly engineering work, to really engineering, taking into account environment and climate change in order to build more resilient transport infrastructure. So it was really handy, and especially for the project which was selected, they were selected by transport institution. We get through each institution to say, okay, what are the main priorities? And they select really the main role of the project which they want to put in this roadmap, so that this document could be really an official document, and really they can use it as a strategic plan. So don't know if I respond to the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, indeed, it's very insightful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you very much. And thanks again for this wonderful and nice presentation. Maybe we need to move on. So our next speaker is Mr. Kwadwo Gian. So Mr. Gian is the head of risk and sustainability at the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, so which is also known as GIIF. So Mr. Gian is a seasoned finance and sustainability executive with over 24 years of experience across Ghana's public and private sector. So his core experiences include climate finance, ESG integration, sustainability leadership, and risk governance. So he is also a chartered environmentalist, a certificated risk analyst, and holds executive certificates in sustainable finance and ESG leadership from MIT, Yale, and Oxford. So we are pleased to have him here joining us today. So, Ms. Gian, please.
Yes, so thank you very much. And thanks to Prof. A of Senegal. Yes. So I think my presentation today will be looking at financing infrastructure in Africa from a risk integration to investment action. So I was listening to Prof. Whilst he was speaking, and I realized that it was good you decided to bring mine just after his, because I think he ended by talking about financing needed to implement the roadmap that they've just developed. I think they just ran through the entire presentation. You can't hear me? Oh, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will be thank you very much for bringing me on board from the financing side of things into this today's webinar. I'm so grateful to be here, because I think that the GCA and the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund over the years had some very good collaborations. So this morning, my presentation concentrates on why resilience matters in Africa, Ghana's roadmap to resilient infrastructure. I think the one that was developed by Senegal was just shared by Prof. And then we will look at what Ghana's roadmap to resilience, the role of the key actors in here, and who we are as the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and then the institutional innovations and then partnerships that we've embarked on over the past couple of weeks. So why does resilience matter in Africa? There is no doubt. I mean, I grew up in an environment where those days, after rains, one could go out to go and pick what looked like some ice cubes, which later on I got to know as hail. So, but these days, all those things are gone. So climate change is actually impacting Africa's infrastructure, our roads, our energy sector, the water, ports, and then even in urban and transport are all being increasingly vulnerable to the intensifying impacts of climate change. According to the AFDB and the IPCC, the continent is experiencing more frequent and intense floods, droughts, and then also sea level rise. In Ghana, for instance, over the last couple of years, almost every year, those living around the coastal areas of the country have had to be relocated once the rains set in. And the unfortunate thing is that some years ago, one could actually predict when rains was going to come in, but these days you're unable to predict as to when the rains will be coming in. It is expected that about 300 billion in annual infrastructure losses will be realized in 2010 without Africa or the globe implementing any form of adaptation into infrastructure development. So what is the Ghana's roadmap to infrastructure resilience? So just as the presentation that was done by Prof, a similar thing was done by the GCA in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation in the country, together with University of Oxford and UNOPS, somewhere in 2022. But then after the report, what then happens? It was launched some 3 years ago, but an institution or one particular ministry needed to take it up. And as an institution that is into infrastructure, we decided to take that up. And as a result of that, the report looked at the main flooding, drought, sea level rise, and then they proposed some targeted adaptation strategies that included integration of nature-based solutions into our infrastructure, just as Prof has also mentioned or just mentioned in their report in Senegal. A similar, because we are all in the same western part of Africa, we have similar challenges, and then our conditions are virtually the same. So that we've realized that a report came out of the fact that most of the infrastructure that we have in the country, the existing ones, especially those in the energy sector, those in the transport sector, and then also even in the water infrastructure space, are all very susceptible to climate change or climate change risk. So the roadmap that was developed more or less aligned with Ghana's development objectives under the SDGs and then the Paris Agreement, and then also in line with our nationally determined contributions as a country. They identified about 35 priority projects, but what have we done as a country? The report clearly indicated that by the year 2050, flooding could impose about 3.9 billion in damages to the country's infrastructure. And over half of the assessed dams face flood risk. So there is Wija Dam. Wija Dam supplies about 80% of Accra's drinking water. So Accra is the capital city of the country, and the dam which supplies about 80% of the water that is consumed in the city is susceptible to climate change impacts in the coming years ahead of us by the year 2030. So there were a number of proposals that were made. So what has been done so far with that? Two key institutions were identified. The Ministry of Finance, which hosts the PPP department, which in Ghana we call the Public Investment and Asset Division in Ghana, plays a key role, one in the project identification and conception. Because you should all realize that when it comes to project finance, if you don't include it at the point where the design is being made, it becomes very difficult to be able to implement any form of adaptation components of the project once you get to a certain stage. So the Ministry of Finance, the Public Investment and Asset Division of the Ministry of Finance has taken this report, has taken it seriously, and then going forward, for the past 3 years, for every single project that is submitted to the PIAD, the Public Investment and Asset Division, they look at the resilient considerations which have been introduced in the earlier planning stages through the role whilst they are screening the project. So they look at the kind of climate risks, they screen it from a climate risk perspective. They also screen it from a resilience perspective in terms of the core benefits that the project is going to deliver to the nation. And then also, they also look at the environmental and social aspects of the project. This exercise was done in collaboration. Once we got the report, there was a need for us as an infrastructure fund to get all the key stakeholders on board. And knowing that PIAD, or the Public Investment and Asset Division, was very key when it comes to infrastructure development, we got the GCA to come on board, and then they trained, they embarked on a master class somewhere 3 years ago, where almost all the key stakeholders in the country took part. So they were trained, and then from day one, from that moment, everybody realized that we have been doing infrastructure in the past not in the right way. And therefore, if we are not careful going forward, all our infrastructure is going to be eroded by climate change. So the Global Center on Adaptation has really been very helpful with respect to this, particularly when it comes to PPPs. But then who is Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund? I've been talking about the Ghana Infrastructure, but who are we and who are we in Ghana? We were established somewhere by an Act of Parliament in 2014 with an initial capital of about 345 million USD. To catalyze and also leverage private sector funds into infrastructure assets in Ghana. As we all know, in Africa, the main problem that we have is how to unlock more private sector financing to fund the infrastructure deficits that we have as a continent. Our main sector focus is on economic and social, and then we are owned by the government 100%. So far, we've committed about 365 million USD in 13 transactions with a balance sheet of about 405 million USD. In terms of products, we can do debt, we can do equity, we can do mezzanine or any credit enhancement instruments that will be required by our clients that we deal with. In terms of the sectors that we focus on, economic infrastructure sectors, mainly we have power, transportation, the telecommunication, oil and gas. We have tourism as well. And on the social side, education is very important to us. Waste management and waste services, very important to us. And then also we have social housing or student accommodation is also very important to us. And then the health sector is equally very helpful to us. What have we done to date? We've been able to leverage the initial amount that was given to us by the government of Ghana by 10 times. So what it means is that for the projects that we finance, we've been able to, for each of the projects, we're able to bring in 10 times what we invested in that particular project. So in terms of the total project cost, we'll be dealing with about 3.6 billion by the time all the projects are completed. And we use mainly Ghanaian sponsors for these projects. So far, debt accounts for about 61% of the projects that we have financed or the product that we've delivered as an institution. Some of the projects that we've done in the past, the Ghana Airport Company Limited, I'm sure those who have been to Ghana, the biggest airport in the country, was financed by us together with the African Development Bank and the Development Bank of Southern Africa, where we invested about 30 million USD into that. In the Takoradi Oil Jetty, that is the second largest port in the country, seaport in the country, that we've invested about 42 million USD into it in terms of debt. And then also we've helped the company to, in terms of debt and then equity instruments, where we've invested about 67 million to lay almost about 7,000 fiber optic cable around the entire country. And then in terms of that, we have another project in the Takoradi region, the Takoradi area, that is the western side of the country, where we've also invested in a port expansion project. We've invested about 63 million USD in terms of debt. And then there's an oil jetty at that same venue, which we also invested close to about $42 million. We are also in the hotel sector. So we have 2 hotels that, as you can see. And then in terms, we also into student accommodation, student housing, where we are playing very heavy, considering what is currently happening in the country in terms of the number of students who qualify to go to university, as against the number of the accommodation that is available for them to utilize. For every project that we finance, we take into consideration the main SDGs. At least for each of the projects that we finance, we should be able to meet. It should be able to meet at least 2 of the SDGs. What have we been doing in terms of the roadmap that was presented by the GCA together with the University of Oxford and our Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology? GIF's role has been mainly in terms of the project design and appraisal. At that stage, for every project that is currently submitted to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, we ensure that resilience is embedded into the investment screening and appraisal process at that stage. We have had some funding from the AFD, that is Agence Française, the French people. We've had about 85 million USD from them. And therefore, we have a technical assistance support also, which came with that particular credit line of about 400,000. So the consultant is there to help us at any point in time to be able to look at the climate vulnerability of the project, the adaptation potential of the project, and then also the long-term performance under future climate scenarios. So all GIF sponsors projects undergo an assessment taking into account all this. And then we favor investment that demonstrate co-benefits, especially when they provide improved service reliability. And then also in terms of job creation, don't forget I had earlier mentioned that we are 100% owned by the government of Ghana. And therefore, when it comes to job creation, it's so dear to our hearts. We are developing guidelines and knowledge briefs with the support of GCA and then the Financial Sector Deepening Africa, FSD Africa, to help project sponsors to mainly identify, prioritize, and cost adaptation measures across different infrastructure sectors in the country. Nature-based solutions and adaptive designs are also very critical to us. Going forward, we believe that we need to really work with nature, especially when it comes to our road infrastructure, which most of the roads that we have in the country currently were not done taking that into consideration. But we believe that if we allow things to move the way they have been, we'll get to a point where all our roads, especially those in the southern part of the country, will be eroded by floods. So both the Public Investment and Asset Division of the Ministry of Finance and then the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund are all very keen on integrating nature-based solutions into infrastructure design, such as mangrove restoration for coastal resilience, and then also urban green drainage to reduce flooding in the country. And then we are also keen on developing financing laws for 5 to 10 priority MBS concept to attract concessional and commercial finance. In fact, GCA left our institution just about 2 months ago. A rep from GCA was here about 2 months ago to help in agreeing on which specific projects that we need to carry forward. Technical assistance from the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI, is also currently being considered with the main objective of strengthening Ghana's infrastructure resilience through data-driven governance and coordination. So as an institution, we think that we cannot be doing infrastructure just as it's been done in the past. We need to do infrastructure taking into consideration how adaptable they become to climate impacts, especially looking at where we are going and then the kind of figures that are being turned out with respect to how climate is going to impact on our infrastructure going forward. So as a result of that, if you recall when Prof. Frey was making his presentation, he had mentioned that financing is needed to implement the roadmap. But then where will this financing come from? So as an institution, we have taken a step forward to more or less ensure that we build very good collaborations and partnerships with international institutions to be able to bring in the needed capital for resilient infrastructure in the country. So as I mentioned, we have had 85 million USD credit line for climate-aligned infrastructure from AFD and the Agence Française, French people. And then also we are currently looking at having a project preparatory facility for green and resilient infrastructure. That is one thing that is one problem that as Africa we are encountered with in terms of how projects are prepared. Most of the time when we get projects at our end for financing, especially PPP projects, you realize that those projects are mostly not adequately prepared, and therefore you are not able to raise the needed capital on international markets. So we are putting in the FS UK FCDO, that the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. We are liaising with them. They are helping us to be able to establish this project preparatory facility in the country, such that every single project which needs to go through that process will have to approach this fund so that the project is adequately prepared. And once the project is adequately prepared, then it becomes bankable for other potential investors to come on board. And with that in mind, we are also setting up a climate sub-fund. FSD Africa, that is a financial sector deepening Africa, is also helping us to be able to set up a multi-currency climate sub-fund that is aligned with Ghana's NDCs. So the understanding is that once the projects are adequately prepared, then this climate sub-fund will then take over those projects which are bankable. And then based on that, because we don't expect that we'll be able to get all the needed capital at the climate sub-fund level, we have also approached institutions at the Green Climate Fund. So we are going through the accreditation process. We are very close to the end of it. And we just started other discussions with Adaptation Fund, where we also want to become accredited, such that we'll be able to get the needed funding. Quite apart from that, we are also liaising with other financial institutions across the globe who are more or less pushing the climate agenda so that they'll be able to come on board, invest in this climate sub-fund that we are going to create. And then as a country, we'll then be able to provide the needed capital for funding the projects that we are able to identify. It has not been that easy. I think you saw a number of projects that I shared. It's not been easy as an African country. There are a number of challenges that we are facing in terms of making our infrastructure resilient as a country and as a continent. The first one, as I mentioned, is project preparation and then the pipeline development. This is one of the bottleneck that we have. We don't have, in terms of bankable projects, we don't have too many of them. And then even if you have, most of the time, they are not climate smart in nature. And then there's limited early stage project development support, which can sometimes delay investment readiness. And then the second one has to do with financing and then investment gaps. Infrastructure adaptation needs in Ghana far exceed available public finance. So the government alone, because for most of our budgets, I mean, we always have deficits. So you definitely need to ensure that the private sector comes on board. But then if the private sector wants to come on board, those projects will have to be bankable. So government alone does not have the needed funding, and therefore the private sector. And then in terms of mobilizing private sector participation remains a challenge due to high perceived risk and a lack of structured de-risking instruments. So that is a role that as an institution, as GIF, we are playing. We believe that by preparing the projects adequately, making them bankable, it becomes more attractive to funding agencies. And then the third one has to do with institutional and technical capacity. That is one thing that I think is not just even in Africa. Climate change and the issues related to climate change are now building up. People are building a lot of capacity in the area, but there is still a lot that needs to be done. And there are gaps in climate data in Africa, technical expertise, and then the coordination across stakeholders hinder robust project planning. Ensuring local governments and private developers understand and apply climate risk frameworks is also an ongoing challenge as a continent and as a country. There is this saying that nobody really buys resilience, but then we all pay for the price of resilience, which I think is very important. So as an institution, we have taken this up. In terms of concluding remarks, we believe that resilience infrastructure is investable, and it's very urgent for us, especially as the African continent. So we are inviting global partners, development banks, and then private investors to join us in scaling these solutions.
Professor Yang is a distinguished expert in disaster risk management, climate resilience, and sustainable development, with over 15 years experience in academia leadership. So he is a long-standing member of UN Science and Technology Advisory Group for Disaster Risk Reduction, and also an active expert committee member of the National Disaster Reduction Committee. So we have the privilege to welcome her today. Professor Yang, please.
All right, thank you. So Dr. Sun, do you see my screen? I shared my screen already.
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure today to share some of our experience. I'm more from, if you notice that I'm more from like academic side, right? Not from the policymaker side, but it's more for science itself, evidence-based policy making. So I would like to share some examples that we had in China for transportation resilience, as well as transportation infrastructure climate adaptation. So again, like probably you already seen this before, because infrastructure has become this common interest, common focus for multiple global strategies. For Sendai framework, they list damaged critical infrastructure and disruption of basic service as one of the key indicators. So the reason I want to address here is like, it's more than infrastructure itself. It's also about the function, the service that the infrastructure can provide. This is critical for livelihood as well as economic development. So right now, we need to build infrastructure, but also we need to build something that can last. Well, this is some research outcome published already 5 years ago by Nature Communications. It says that about like 75% of global transportation assets will be affected by 1 in 100 years floods. Temperature, precipitation, this will shorten the life cycle of highway dramatically, and also increase the maintenance cost and the repair cost. And more importantly, the finding is that transportation interruption cost is even higher than the physical damage itself. So actually, on the other side, like if we look at the global risk report, we'll notice that right now the challenge is for risk governance is we are having a more connected world. So when we try to understand climate risk, it's much more than the climate extreme values and exposure analysis, risk analysis, but also we need to look at this interdependence and its impact macroscopically. So this is a systemic challenge. Well, then the second question basically is what is resilient infrastructure? Many of our former presenters have already mentioned these ideas. But for infrastructure, about 10 years ago, we had some discussion with global scientists, and then we gave very simple 4 principles that very easy to understand. These are, if we want to say that infrastructure is resilient for climate, for disaster, then it has to be able to resist the shocks. Well, the shocks can be all kinds of different hazards. Can be temperature, can be precipitation, can be flooding, can be wind. So do we have the capacity to resist these external shocks? The second is like, what is the capacity to mitigate those negative impacts? Well, then this is more than infrastructure itself. It can be the physical side, and also it can be the institutional side. And the third aspect is the recovery. How fast we can recover from the damage? How fast we can restore the function of the transportation system? And the last one, probably the most important one, is adaptation. Adaptation basically is the capacity of learning, the capacity of maintaining higher, better performance in the long run. So we believe that these 4 features are all crucial for infrastructure resilience. So for in this perspective, all these perspectives, then we say there are many key questions regarding to infrastructure, especially transportation infrastructure. How can we better assess the impact and risk of climate on transportation infrastructure? How can we better access the system which are interdependent, right? Transportation is typical interdependent system. We have different transportation systems such as like highway, freeway, waterway, railway, and all these transportation modes are connected with each other. Do we have a better model to understand the impact and risk? And how can we better restore or recover from a damaged infrastructure? Then how can we better improve the investment? Or say, can we design better adaptation measures? These are the key questions driving the research on resilient infrastructure in China. And also, if we look at the global efforts, there are many existing research projects or say analytical tools developed for resilient transportation. In UK, we have the CCA, Climate Change Assessment. These are like periodical assessment every 3 years. Now we have that report ready for 2012, 2015, 2018, 2021. And in EU, they have this climate resilient infrastructure projects starting from 2013. And in US, they have this national infrastructure protection plan. In Japan, they also have climate. They also have like this climate change adaptation impact projects. So in China, we also started this type of research from 2010, 2011. And our work is pretty similar to what Professor Huang just mentioned. We started from this hazard analysis, which better understand the climate change variables. Then we go for exposure analysis to see what are new features given the current challenge on climate. Then we go for vulnerability analysis to see how our transportation infrastructure is going to be influenced by these climate variables. Then we go for impact analysis, risk analysis, recovery analysis, and cost-benefit analysis. The ultimate goal is we need to better understand the system behavior, the transportation system behavior on the context of climate change, then design this disaster risk reduction strategies. So I will just quickly go through this because I understand that maybe today's audience are more from investment side, and some of you are from academia. Of course, as a researcher, I'm keenly looking forward to potential collaboration with you. So for hazard analysis, it's understandable that we are looking at those extremes like temperature, precipitation, but more importantly, we are also looking at this joint compound hazards to see how this temperature and precipitations will coupled with each other, because this coupling effect will actually pose more severe impact on transportation infrastructure. Then we continue with exposure analysis. In China, we have already accomplished this rainstorm exposure analysis, extreme heat analysis, flooding analysis, typhoon analysis, and currently we're also working on glacial impact. So this gives us a better understanding of like which area will be the region that suffered most from climate change and under which climate variables. So in this way, we can better plan or say prioritize the projects. And also we continued with impact analysis. To perform impact analysis on infrastructure is much more complicated than climate variable analysis and also exposure analysis, because to perform impact analysis, we really need to understand what is fragility of transportation infrastructure towards different natural hazards like flooding. So by doing that, we'll need interdisciplinary analysis. For example, here we use a global flooding model, common flood, to simulate the future flooding scenario, global scenario, and then load it on this national transportation network. Then we will be able to understand, okay, what is the performance of the national transportation network? For example, we compare the performance of China and the US highway system, and we can see that under the same type of external shocks, the performance of the system is very much different. So, for example, Chinese railway system is much more sensitive to flooding than the US system, US highway network. We haven't performed this type of research for Africa countries yet, but I'm keenly looking forward to future collaboration. Then we can maybe better understand and compare the performance of transportation system under different types of external hazards such as flooding, typhoon, and other like extreme snowstorm or say rainstorm. So this will give us a better understanding that how can we better plan this transportation infrastructure. And also some interesting phenomenon we discovered from this research is that for transportation infrastructure especially, is that it's such a highly connected network. So it is very important to find out tipping points or say the critical link. For most systems, we believe that this critical link usually are the ones with the highest degree, right? With connected to the most cities or most region. But actually, if we have new tools, analytical tools, we'll find that this tipping points sometimes can be quite unusual. So here indicate the needs of new analytical tools that can better fit transportation infrastructure on the context of climate change. And also, we had a lot of work focused on risk analysis. If we look at, because risk analysis has been so popular since last century, right? Because it mainly works for insurance companies. But when we apply it into transportation infrastructure, we noted that it's much more than components. So we need to have a more network view or system view, because the risk of a component of one road or one bridge is very much different from the risk of the transportation system. We need to better understand the impact of this climate variable towards the system function rather than only the physical damage. So we developed many functional risk assessment framework. We identified the natural hazards. We performed simulation, multi-color simulation to simulate like thousands of hurricanes. Then we performed functional fragility, the fragility analysis for system function rather than just one component. Then based on that, we will be able to evaluate network functionality. Then this risk assessment result will no longer be what is the possibility that one bridge or one road will be damaged, but also how the system transportation function will be damaged. So anyway, with the help of like tools like multi-color simulation, we will be able to do that. So this gives us a lot of hint on where or how should we implement this infrastructure projects. And another thing is regarding to the investment. Investments for infrastructure is always limited. We always have difficulty in getting enough funding. Then the problem will always be which project, where should I invest? I have 10,000 of highways, but which segments are the ones that I need to retrofit? Which segments are the ones I need to rebuild? Or say I need to create more alternative routes, right? So we also developed many models or say analytical tools that can help us to understand this criticality. This criticality identification is widely used in this prioritization for engineering projects. And actually this research comes from the very real demand from a local agency in Hainan province. We have in Hainan province, we have our transportation department. They're asking us a very simple question. Like they suffer from hurricane every year, from typhoon. And every year they have a lot of losses, physical losses. So from the system perspective of view, then which roads should we retrofit? Which roads should they repair in priority? So there are many research. If you're interested, we're willing to share this experience with you in future. And as we said, like recovery, how fast we can recover on resource is also very important indicator for resilience, for infrastructure resilience. So from research perspective view, we also utilize Hainan as our case study areas to try to understand the different recovery strategies. This is also a demand from this transport department there. They say every time when they suffered from typhoon, there are so many roads damaged, and the resource that you have probably also limited. Then how can we better utilize the current resources to achieve the maximized efficiency in the sense of the transportation system? So we actually developed a lot of tools for them as well. We can see that if the recovery strategy is well developed, like here, or undeveloped, there are huge difference in efficiency. So I strongly recommend that for those investment agencies or say this management agencies, we need to pay attention to this type of soft research, because with very limited funding or say resources, you can also effectively improve the efficiency of your current existing system. And of course, we develop a comprehensive assessment framework because we want to understand what is potential. Because we in previous research we talked about the flooding impact on this highway infrastructure. Then with this comprehensive assessment, we'll be able to understand what is the potential benefit of some adaptation assessment. Basically, if we input a different scenario with adaptation measures, without adaptation measures, then we will see that under the same severity of hazard or flooding or temperature, what is the saving? So this type of technology power thing is critical for the policy making. These are the ways to provide this evidence to support policy making. Then I also want to mention a little bit about this interdependence. Right now, all these infrastructure systems are highly interdependent. Railway system depends on highway system, because if you don't have highway, then people cannot go to the railway station, right? And also electricity system, communication system, they provide the basic support for the smooth operation of the transportation network. So previous work most are for one system, but we really need to extend that to system of systems. For example, in China, we coupled this railway network with our highway network. The railway network is red lines; they are much more denser. This is, but the blue line are the railway network, which is sparse. If we link them as a coupled system, their performance is very different from a singular level of network. So while we are conducting research or design research projects to support our transportation infrastructure development, it is valuable to think about this interdependence. And please do pay attention to the interdependence of this coupled system. Okay, I know that I have limited time, so I want to also talk a little bit about adaptation. While we're talking about adaptation, many people just believe that it's more about how can we how to repair what's cut. Now, how can we better improve the prevention level, right? But it's much more than that. Adaptation basically is to repair from what's coming, so we're safer, stronger, and ready. So there are many options. It can be infrastructure updates, like elevate your roads, you build new flood barriers. It also can be how can we better integrate natural-based solutions, like green infrastructure, retention basins. It also can be some operational measures, like set up early warning system, to have reroute planning, to encourage flexibility in working hours. And all of these adaptation options need to be better reorganized to achieve its maximized efficiency. Because I remember in previous presentation, some audience asked about this question, say that, do we have some money saving adaptation options? I want to show you some examples. One example is for early warning system. This is a real question from our China Highway Network Center, because they've invested some money in this early warning system. And their question is, should we keep investing in this early warning system? Is this like a money saving measures for us? So we utilize their data in the past 10 years for hazard related road damage and road congestion. And we noticed that this collapse, this subsidence cracking, and also landslide are most frequent hazards for our Chinese highway system. And what we do is we developed a economic analysis tool to be able to quantify the direct benefit and indirect benefit induced by introducing an effective early warning system. I just want to go easy here with that. We notice that the weather early warning service for highway system can effectively reduce loss, whereas the benefit exceeds cost by a ratio about 50 times. So say, for example, maybe I need to invest like 1 million for early warning system, but actually the profit, the reduced loss I can gain there is 50 million. So this type of analysis just confirmed this, bring more confidence for these management agencies so that they will be able to continue their investment in early warning system. If we're talking about science-based policymaking, that's the evidence we need to produce for the decision maker. So another example is this integrated approach. If we look at this IPCC risk module, we know that we have 3 parts: hazards, vulnerability, exposure. So we're trying to propose some like synthesize for different adaptation measures. For example, for hazards, it's like if we can use some nature-based solution, green roofs. And for exposure, can we use early warnings or demand reduction procedure to reduce this exposure? For vulnerability, is if we can use some like green infrastructure or protect the critical links. So we are trying to help the governments to understand the potential benefit we can get by integrating all these different adaptation measures. So here is like for hazard reduction, we're using this green infrastructure. For vulnerability, we're using this protection, and for exposure reduction, we're improving our early warning system. And we try to understand what is the economic benefits from the reduced damage. So we take the case study in Beijing, because Beijing is a capital of China, right? So it's quite huge, but here it has a huge urban density, and the traffic condition is that every day the daily road traffic volume is about like 20.4 million vehicles, right? And subway exceeded like 15 million. So it's just busy. And also in Beijing that we have the drainage system is kind of old. So the design standard is relatively low because it's designed, most often designed 40, 60 years ago. And what we did is we developed a flood hazard simulation tool affiliated with the traffic simulation module. And then we insert different adaptation measures. And then we developed another like cost-benefit analysis module to better understand what is the potential, gain from there. So here are some measures we considered. We can pave these gardens on the roof of this building in the city. In this way, this will greatly reduce the runoff on the surface, right? And also, we can identify what are the critical links, what are the links, the roads or bridges that will suffer most from flooding and inundation. And then we can use physical measures to improve its prevention level. And of course, in that way, we'll pay a lot of money, right? We need a higher cost. And the third way is we can release this early warning information and ask people to have more flexible travel. So, for example, like commuters can work from home. So we propose all these different options and analyze it through our toolbox. Then this is what we can find. The interesting, I just want to go easy with the technical side, but I just want to say that we notice that the soft measures actually are very, very, very much effective. It has a much higher benefit cost ratio than hard adaptation measures. And if we can combine all of this, this will greatly reduce the economic damage caused by future extreme flooding, storm and flooding. So anyway, Just in short, I want to say that right now we need a paradigm shift. We need to shift from this avoid momentum to adapt momentum, and also shift from delay, because we need a new business model, and also we need a new management mechanism. We need new policies. So by doing that, I think science, academia can still play a very important role there, because we can provide better evidences for this transformation. So with that, I also welcome partners to join our IRDR communities, because we have many scientists across the world. Also in Africa, we have ICOE to collaborate on the relevant research. And we hope that our scientific output can better assist the policymaking for the next generation of resilient transportation infrastructure. All right, I just stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Yang, for this very insightful presentation. And so given the limited time, we may have time for just one question.
Okay.
So yeah, we don't have the question from the audience side, but I have a question in regard to the early warning system that you just mentioned. So from my understanding, early warning system is not the development of all the early warning system is not a very short-term project. It's a long-term project. We need to get experience. We need to set up the instrument. And in your opinion, for African cases, because the Africa do have limited resources, so it's not easy to build this type of system. But in your opinion, does it still to invest on the early warning system in Africa, given the limited resources and given the uncertainty on the prediction results that may not be like fully correct during an event? Over to you.
Thank you. I think this is a wonderful question. You're right. For early warning system, usually we'll have to invest a lot in this observation stations that cost a lot of money, right? But right now, my understanding is that with the capacity, of new AI technology, actually WMO is working on a project to provide like high spatial resolution forecasting system. They are talking about like higher than 1 km times 1 km. So their precision or resolution can cover maybe like 1 square kilometers or even much less than that. And the accuracy, well, this is another issue, right? This accuracy has been greatly improved. I know that WMO is improving that. And also I know that there are many research agencies as well as companies that are working on that. I know that Google is working on that, right? In China, we have the CLA is working on that. They're all trying to produce some high resolution, high reliability weather forecasting system. So I think for me, this is much better than nothing. Of course, this may not be ideal, but this will greatly reduce the need for money for installing a lot of observation stations. So what I can see is like they can use some local data to calibrate their model to produce the better prediction. Then in this way, all we need to do is like we need to have more shareable technical infrastructure that can really introduce the data, at least bring the data to the local agencies. And for local agencies, they need to soft match. They need to just use this information to improve their procedure, to improve their preparation. And this type of activity doesn't require a lot of money. So I'm still very positive towards this direction. I think with the help of AI technology, with some limited investment in this management procedure optimization, better preparation, we'll still achieve quite effective system. Yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. So given the limited of time, I'm not going to ask more questions. So I would like to just thank all the speakers.
Can I jump in, Zin?
Oh, yes.
Can I
please.
jump in?
Yeah.
It's just a contribution from what we've seen since this morning here in Dhaka, afternoon in China. So I was wondering, taking consideration from the Ghana case, which is more advanced in terms of technical and follow-up issues, follow-up projects going to institutional one. From Senegal, we are just like a technical one to evaluating the risk and putting some roadmap. But that far we are where we are. So and I think it's the same case as you know in Kenya. Kenya also is having the same project as well. So I saw that in the comments, many countries from Africa are behind, and the needs is extremely high. And I was wondering, so how China and through this collaboration with Africa and GCA, really is what I put in the chat, can take the lead, at least to tackle this issue, at least to see how they can lead and bring on board really many African countries on board in this issue, because I mean, China is, in terms of transport infrastructure, is well advanced. I've seen a lot of things, and all these are taking the climate issues is already taking place. So that's a kind of suggestion which can come up from this webinar. Thanks.
Thank you.
You get my question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Professor.
So Dr. Sun, may I have a very quick response to Dr. Phillips' question? I think this is a wonderful starting point. What I can see here is like, I think at least academically, from research side, I think China, Africa should initialize some research projects. Because I understand that Africa there are like huge threats of climate change on infrastructure system. So we need to have a better understanding of what is the critical area, what is the most sensitive area, what is a critical area, what are the critical projects can save the most economic losses. So I think this is something that we definitely need to better plan the actual projects. So from my perspective, I think scientific collaboration is something that we really need to push forward. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yang. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we run a little bit out of time. So in case of if you have further like questions or requirement, please feel free to reach to us. So our audience is also asked if we could share the slides. So after this webinar, we will discuss with the professors and experts. And if it's possible to share, we will put the slides on our GCA's website. So again, I would like to thank all the 4 speakers for today, Professor Fai, Mr. Gian, and Dr. Huang, and Professor Yang. Thank you very much for this very interesting and valuable presentations for us. We really learned a lot from today's webinar. And so for now, of course, it's very hard, but I would like to close for today's webinar. And thank you very much indeed for participating and giving the presentation in today's webinar. And thanks our audience for attending today's webinar. Thank you very much. And thank you. Bye-bye. And you can look, our next webinar is planning to have like in middle of June. In middle of July, we are planning for a second round of the webinar. So looking forward to your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.